on the users. Hence, you have what you call user-centered designs like joint application development, what we call JAD. Others are there's a technique that I think some of you know some of these techniques where you focus on the speed of development, right? Like rapid application development, where these are some of these agile approaches who are being proposed or critiqued. And then you also have some that are actually, there's even one that is called FAST, FAST, which is more like a facilitated application technique, specification technique, where you have the joint team identifying the problem, they propose the solution, they negotiate for the approaches. So there are very many variants of developing software, and so we find that these particular authors took time to critique the model-driven approach, which while while people are drawing really the models and all that, there's the iteration backward. It tends also to follow almost like the waterfall, where you have the teams, they need to understand the scope, but there's always the feedback loop backwards that um, is able to bring feedback to the to the solution. Yeah. So you have the requirements, you have the problem analysis, you draw models, showing the existing systems, showing the solutions that you're going to have, critique, ensure the tools, everything is there even before you go to the. I don't know why this thing keeps on misbehaving when I'm on. When I'm on slideshow. I hope you can see my slideshow. Yeah. Great. So we resume to the issues that are at hand, which are really to do with the challenges. I don't know why this thing is misbehaving. I need my mouse working so that I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So we'll look at some of the issues that are there in terms of the high level design issues. And the first one that these authors really talk about is the security. Yeah, the security. In terms of security, where you really have to understand what are the weaknesses, what are the vulnerabilities that are there, what are some of the things um, that are critical, so that you know what solutions that you're going to create in, or how you're going to embed security into the application. And why it is important is because remember that the e-commerce you're developing, a lot of people are going to be joining in or interacting with it. It is not a local area network that you're dealing with. It is now a wide area network. Anybody is joining from wherever they are. And so you, as the developer or the provider of the platform, you're not in control of the environment because there are several service providers, yeah, that is there. So you start then having the challenge that you need to understand, at least basically, network securities and how transactions or data passes through the network, whichever um, basic networks that are there, but we know like right now we have the GSM networks that we use for the connections to the various providers or people that are going to be using the systems. So understanding that you are also relying on the security measures of the underlying network. And so it is important to understand that. And once you understand that, then the question will be, because you're not in control of the provider's network. Safaricom is in control of their network. Airtel is in control of their network. Liquid Telecom is in control of their network. Kenneth is also in control of their network. So you can imagine that you have very many people around. So you start then focusing on, your focus shifts from the physical protection of the network services to one where you're actually looking at how do you secure the data as it traverses through the network. Yeah. How do you ensure that what is it that must be exchanged? Yeah. And if it is going to be exchanged, how should it actually be exchanged over the network while at the same time we are protecting it over the network? And it brings me to the question to the question of in when you're designing then the 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 application. How many of us actually even remember the what do you used to call it? Are there 7 layers of the communication protocol? How many of us remember the layers of communication, and what are we in control of, and what, so you start having to think about what is it that you yourself can control, because the standards are already there. And so you're looking at the data segments, but even as you look at the data segments, how do you protect the data that you're transacting over the internet in a way that it is not intercepted? Yeah. Recently, there was an article of uh, the card scandal. I didn't read it myself, but I saw the headline. How many of us saw the headline about the card scandal, where it is actually also involving upcoming programmers like yourselves who are in the universities? Or how many of us actually work who have been involved? I remember mentioning I don't know if it is in this class, that I met somebody who actually works in the bank, and I was hoping that I could actually invite him one of the days, but I did not get his contacts. And he was telling us that a lot of our students, you get entangled in fraud. Yeah, in fraud. So I hope it is not our students that are there. So but you can read that, and that is one of the issues that we are dealing with today. So in your own time, you can check that article out and see, and understand that you have techniques, you all have skills, but you should not allow the wrong people to use your capacities to put you into problems, because that is just about networking and knowing that it doesn't matter what you do over the network. Um, as long as you're communicating over public provided network facilities, you will still be able to be located. Yeah? It's all about information exchange. And so, in terms of these security aspects, you're actually asking yourself what data in that business process needs to be exchanged and what does not really need to be exchanged. Yeah. So once you understand that what needs to be exchanged, then um, it becomes easier for you to apply mechanisms that you are aware of. For example, if you're going, actually, you should be the one who should be you guys should be giving us the examples. So, how is data protected over the network? Let me ask that. How have you seen data being protected over the network? Yes, Alex, and then Jerry.
Okay, for the network, of course, you have what we call like certificates, SSL certificates. So the connection is secured where the data is encrypted before it's being sent. So that's one of the ways that data is protected over the network. So
Yeah, the
I would say by
encryption.
encryption, yes.
All right, thank you. Jerry, your hand was up.
Yeah, I also wanted to mention encryption, but yeah,
Okay.
exactly what Alexa said.
Yeah, Alex has said two things. There's, when your certificates are valid, normally when you go to our website, depending, even sometimes our university, when they have not updated the website, you get that alert that if you're going to exchange information, your information is not secure because their certificates are not yet up to date, and that means they are not able to apply the techniques that the provider of the hosting environment provides for data security. And then, of course, there's the typical encryption of the data itself. Jeremy?
Um, it's possible to use authentication headers. When you use
Mhm.
authentication headers, you might need a network secret key for you to access network traffic or APIs. Then on top of the headers, you can also use tokens so that you can access using authentication tokens like 3WT.
Yeah, but just imagine, okay, I've not traded on, what is it called, Alibaba. But imagine that every time you needed to do something, you needed a token. Wouldn't that slow down? I'm just thinking.
It depends, but it expires after a certain period of time. So you're just registered against it, and it checks important requests. Maybe not all requests, but maybe the payment, the
So
send, and the
more
transfer.
of session
Yeah, session
session
management. But auth
identifiers.
headers, I don't think auth headers have a big overhead because they're
Mm.
just part of the header section.
Mhm. All right, thanks, Jeremy. Edwin?
uh, Use of third-party players, for example, by involving technologies like Kerebus, so that the security processes are not between the client and the server, but it also involves a third-party player.
Uh-huh. All right, thank you, Gregory.
I think data within a network can be protected using the firewalls, things like firewalls and other.
Yeah, yes,
They're
but,
called.
but that is you within your net. Gregory, we are trying to answer. Data is moving from your
Mhm.
network to another network because remember the user is maybe using one network, you're using another network, and maybe your financial provider is on another network, and your um, supplier is on another network. So we are past the local controls of firewalls. So over networks, how do we ensure transactions are secure or data is secure?
Okay, I misunderstood that.
Oh, okay. All right. So you start seeing your understanding or the application of some of the courses that you are taught by the people, we call them the experts in distributed technology, Christine Ronging, Professor Kahonge, Professor Abade. I don't know who else is in that stream. Yeah, they're the ones who deal a lot with the network issues and the network platforms. So you start trying to see how well can you secure it, reduce the risk of interception. Yeah. So it means then, as you're designing the application, you need to be knowledgeable on what to use, some of the things to use, how they are used, the protocols that are available, as well as the emergence techniques and services provided by whoever you are interacting with. And so it means then, if you as a designer, because sometimes you may never know everything, if you feel then you don't have those competencies, you can actually look for an expert in that area who will actually assist you to understand, and you'll be able to incorporate the appropriate securities that need to be there. So that's the overall in terms of the network security. But there's also the security of the transaction itself, yeah, the authentication, the confidentiality of the transaction itself. And so you start remembering the properties of data that are there. So you read about the ACID properties, which is atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. Those properties are very important for e-commerce transactions. And so you also have to start understanding how do you use the cryptographic techniques that are there to build in some of these things. And so you find that sometimes, like we were saying, if we have everybody who just says, okay, there are these things that you can build e-commerce websites using tools, and they don't understand some of these aspects about data, about transactions being consistent in the sense that your backend databases, there is no query in that what needs to be updated, the data is consistent and reflects the true transactional status of the data. So you find then that you need to understand this. So, and there's need to treat these aspects, these ACID aspects of e-commerce transactions very importantly. And sometimes you may find that people don't have this knowledge. And so it puts us as we who are computer scientists, information systems experts, we are able to understand, even when we are testing applications, some of the things to look out for. And so it gives you an opportunity to build better techniques to secure transactions for your platforms. Then the other thing that is important when you're looking at the high level, as you can see there, the first thing that you're looking at was the security. Yeah, was the security. So the other thing that is important is communications. Yeah, understanding the communication and the networking. Here, we need to understand, and that is why you start seeing your understanding of the web, the internet protocols, the web in itself, very critical, because you start applying or being able to balance the limitation of bandwidth, which may not necessarily apply if you are in a place where bandwidth is not an issue. But if you are in a place where the technologies that are there, for example, 2G, your networking environment there, some of your customers are actually coming from 2G areas or localities, then you start seeing there's a bandwidth limitation. And so if there's going to be a bandwidth limitation, what is it that you will include and what will you not include? For example, I don't know how many of you, sometimes when you load a page, you start hearing background music playing. I don't like it because I did not ask for the music, for example, or the adverts. You are loading on a news article, and there is something on the background being, playing small videos, and they're distracting you. But we all have different expectations of what has been put on the web. And so bandwidth is one of the things that you may need to consider, and how then it affects some of the decisions you make. What are you going to include in your content, and what are you not going to include in the content? Yeah. And you may find that maybe even if you're going to include the graphics, you may want to optimize some of your images so that they are not as heavy. Uh, you know, the the visibility does not, the file itself is not heavy. So maybe you may go for the same image, but maybe perhaps lighter. So depending on the where you are, how you want to design it, you may actually put in that particular image. But if you're in a place where bandwidth is not an issue, then you can actually include all the heavy graphics so that your customers can see the images in a clear way, or if they are videos, or if you want them to try on the virtual reality aspects of your e-commerce, they're able to do that. Yeah. Again, understanding where the customer is coming from. Do they have the patience to wait for it to load, or will that influence their perception of the user experience of your website? And so maybe perhaps they may not want to use that. Yeah. How do you want to identify your customers? And at the same time, even now as we talk about location, you also need to understand the data protection, put in agreements so that even if before a person proceeds, maybe perhaps they have agreed to what setup is what setup is important for them in terms of the cookie setups. If you think about what data will be collected and what data will be used, all those things are quite critical for you to understand in terms of communications and networking, and what kind of data that you use. Then the other thing that is also important, and I think we started seeing this yesterday when some of our colleagues explained some of the challenges they had as they were um, as they embarked, or as they continued to complete their 4th-year projects. So under the high-level design, the other issue that is also quite important for us to understand is the language and tools that we use. Yeah. So what languages, what tools will we use to develop? What are the possibilities of changes occurring? Yeah, what are some of the changes that we envisage? What are the providers of these tools and techniques, and the languages that we use? What is it that they're saying about their support, the long-term support of it, and all that? So it's important to find, are the tools, are the languages, are the platforms I'm using stable enough? Are they likely to change? Do we have people who are skilled to develop the platforms in those, especially if you're doing in-house development, or even if you have been contracted to carry out the development by someone else? The question of, do you have the skills to carry out the project in a way that it meets the software standards that are expected for a commercial for a commercial entity or for a commercial application where many people are going to be using it. Again, remember that you don't want to be using an application every now and then it fails, it crashes. It doesn't leave you with a good taste, or you'll most likely you will be able to you may actually abandon it. Yeah. The other thing is that the tools or the languages you're using, how open are they? I think one of the things that we see with the advancements of these technologies is that I think people nowadays don't have a lot of hindrances in terms of integration. I may be wrong, since I've not been a practitioner for a while. I may be assuming that the use of open integration APIs, these APIs has kind of like opened up that space. But since we have an entrepreneur in the house, maybe he can tell us what are the experiences he has had with the integration. Are there tools or languages that have made it? I think it is Edwin. Edwin, yesterday you were giving us an example there where you had a challenge of integration. Could you remind us, is it because of the tools or is it because that module that you are attempting to integrate into that is already integrated is very proprietary, and so it becomes a little bit difficult to disintegrate? There was the gentleman who was talking about an ERP and library. I think he's called Edwin Mukalisi. Yes.
Yeah. I'm having a good network. Are you hearing me?
We can't hear you. You're a bit faint today. All right. Are you able to remind us, or we can proceed? The issue of integration becomes important because of the data that is needed to be exchanged. So, for example, if you think about how you identify your commodities on your platform and how those commodities are actually identified by the retailers or the suppliers, remember that like the suppliers also have to update their their inventories. And so if the tools or if technologies you're using cannot be able to exchange the data, then it hinders that exchange of data. And the exchange of data is important and mutually required by those who are participating in the ecosystem. Uh, and so the identifying in terms of how do we exchange the information, what kind of information needs to be exchanged is very important. Now, when we look at web development, again, in terms of language and tools, we are looking at where there's frequent changes, even in the use of some of the languages. I think I was sharing that when you talk about like PHP, I think it has been there for a long while. HTML is the standard, but now you have tools where you can actually even generate a website without having to know the programming languages. Writing a HTML code used to be something very important those days, but nowadays it's really is not, because you have all these tools. So even when you are designing these applications, depending on the tools that you are using, being aware that it's demanding in the sense that it needs to be adaptive to the platforms. It needs to be adaptive to various browsers. You have to look at how is this website or e-commerce appearing on the Google Chrome, on the Internet Explorer. I don't know which other one is there. I think there used to be one called Opera. There used to be another one called Firefox. So being able to ensure that your programmers are knowledgeable and that you can actually retain them. Yeah, retaining them. We'll see also the question where the other aspect when we come to about the development team. So you must take into account all these things that, okay, I'm going to choose this kind of platform and tools that I'm going to use. Have maybe recruited these persons. Maybe this project is going to end for a year. What if in the middle they decide to disappear and they get something more interesting? We must also be aware of the new languages that are emerging, their pros, their cons, and how to balance the need to look like you're up to date with the new languages and the need to have stability of the service you're providing vis-a-vis the new functionalities that are provided. And then also in the high level, one of the things that is also important is the issue of databases. Yeah, because when you think about um, the technologies of the web, yeah, it was never really to be a transaction. It's just that uh, we keep on modifying. The owners or the innovators looked at it more as a platform to exchange information, yeah, and not really transaction oriented. And so we've looked around, or other innovators have come up with ways within which we can actually integrate the databases and have database web-enabled applications so that we are able to store the transactions. But even as you do that, remember the atomicity property of data, the transaction data, and being able to ensure that no data at any one point is in an inconsistent state. Yeah. And this is now explains some of the challenges where you find you have paid for something. On one end, it says you have paid. On the other side, it says you have not paid, and they have to reconcile that and be able to see who then who is going to be um, uh, providing that how you'll be reconciling the data in case there is any inconsistencies. But we also know that the emerging trends of NoSQL databases. So how do you trade off? When do you use NoSQL? When do you use SQL? There's the notion that NoSQL maybe is providing better performance, availability, and all those other things. How then do you balance it out with large volumes that maybe perhaps require distributed databases? All those things come into consideration. And given that these are transactions, it means then there is aspects of data moving from one place to another place to ensure if it is aspects to do with money data is captured. If it is sales data, it is captured. Inventory data, it is captured. And a lot of organizations already have ERP systems or financial systems that they use, and they are not about to throw it away because of e-commerce. So the question of how do you then integrate all this data that has to do with sales data, you want to be able to finally analyze. It's not just integration with accounting systems, but maybe also even integrating with their customer relationship systems or management systems, CRMs, so that you're able to get sales data. How do you able to pull out all those data? If you've already built a data warehouse for your data engines to be able to see what products move, to be able to get new information. Who is, when they buy, what are they buying together with what? So you find that all these have to be put into consideration as you wonder or as you consider where does NoSQL come in, where does the SQL come, and when it is the SQL, which database is more appropriate, what can handle the kind of volumes that we are looking for, what can handle the distribution that we are looking for, and how it will handle all that, and how they'll be ensure that at any one point the data is still safe. Still safe. A long time when when there wasn't a lot of advancements, especially with the distributed systems, you'd go to an ATM and you'd find it gives you balance X. And if you go in another, between just the same hour, then you'd find, if you go to another ATM, you'd find a different balance. And of course, those who may not have understood the technology would think that maybe the bank has an error, but you see, it's all about the distributed databases and how frequently they are updating one another, or how the master is quickly updating the slaves in the distributed systems. And so you'll be tempted to over withdraw, and then you get into problems because you're withdrawing money that you did not have. Yeah. So that's to do with the high level design issues. Then the other critical issue that this paper discusses is about the development team. Yeah, in terms of the development team, I think we have talked here and there about it, that you have different people involved in mapping out maybe perhaps the customer experience. Yeah, you want to have marketers there. You have maybe these people who are good in graphic design and things like that. But these people do not really have a computing background. There's the limitations of what technology can do and do it efficiently. And so how do you then have all these people who are there in the project, and how do you manage them so that uh, every point or every concern is addressed and they all understand what is it then, or they come to a consensus, what can actually be done. Yeah, so it's important to have a project manager who can understand the technologies and also understands the business direction. Because if you only understand the technology, you may never understand why the business or why the marketers are interested in certain aspects of the platforms or in certain functionalities. It's not just selling, but they also want it designed in a way that there's appropriate customer experience, and that the way maybe a customer moves along, you know, what they call customer journey maps. The journey maps, when a customer is buying this, as they're doing that, what else will they be able to do? Yeah, so mapping that journey and translating that journey into functionality is important, so that there's that balance of the expectations and things like that. Then, of course, the tools that are going to be used in managing the entire project. You know, there are very many different tools out there. We have learned about project management, and we have seen that sometimes in businesses, project management is very important to ensure that you carry out the tasks on time within the costs and deliver it functioning well. Yeah, so all these aspects of project management come in handy. And of course, managing the code, managing the tasks, what platforms are you using? There's importance to have the team agree on the tools that they are going to use. And then, of course, once your platform is out there, how does your team handle the feedback? You know, I think one of the things that sometimes we used to laugh at is that the network technicians at ICT, you'd report an issue and they'll tell you, but mine is working. So you wonder, but I'm telling you, yours is working, but from my office, it is not working. And it took them a long while to understand that it is not about their platform or their network working from their offices. It's about the user and the query the user has raised. It's a valid query, and they need to understand the user from that point, that from my point of view, I'm actually trying to access this and it is not working. So how do we handle the user feedback? As development teams, we should not be defensive, because it is not that the feedback we are getting is negating what we have done. The feedback we are getting is feedback to improve on what we already have, to make it better for the user. At the end, we are actually developing for the user so that they are able um, to use it well. And so having a positive attitude towards feedback is important, so that we're not looking at it from a defensive point of view, but how then we can improve the experience of the customer. Then the other thing that is there is the navigational issues or the user interface design issues. And there was a smaller paper, that the second paper on usability. It is a very short paper, and I hope we were all able to read it. And here we start seeing aspects of how do you navigate your page. How do you keep your customers focused, depending on what it is that you are putting on your e-commerce application. So the design of the navigation is important, how the user interface, the reusability of even the knowledge the user has is very important, because a lot of us are never asked about the user experience, and we never participate in it, but we're expected to enjoy it. You know, when we are using it, we're expected to enjoy it and things like that. So we must be able to ask ourselves, are we able to test the speed at which the page loads, the efficiency of the navigation? And here the navigation is really about how deep is the navigation to the item or to the information the user requires. Yeah. What is the content that is there, how secure, and all those other things that we have been talking about. So the user experience is important, and sometimes it's always good to pilot your user experience when you're done, before you expose it to the customers. Maybe have a pilot team that can actually grant you feedback on what is it that they have felt as they used your application, the feedback on the navigation, feedback on the overall experience, was it joyful? And there are various metrics that people have used to measure usability, to measure the experience, to measure, does it bring joy to the customer? Is the customer happy? Is it easy to learn? And things like that. So that aspect, to provide more personalized experience, requires you then to also understand the usability of your design, to understand the various customer journeys that may be there, to understand how do these customers really want to perceive the things that we are putting there for them to see. Do they want a video? What, even if it is you're putting whatever content you're putting in there, how does it reflect according to their cultures? Yeah. So it's very important to understand a little bit of your users, their shopping experiences, their likability of some of the things that are there, and all that. That is very important for personalized services. And it calls them to understand who is your customer, who is your customer, who is that customer that you're looking at and you are looking to provide a service for. And then the other thing is the detailed design. In terms of the detailed design, this is where you come in, you are almost describing what it is that you want to see in your detailed design. You have captured how the system will work, the relationship with each modules, the overall architecture. You are very aware of it, how you're structuring your data design, how it's going to interact with the other system, at what points it is going to be interacting, how it is going to respond to specific events, what triggers what. Yeah, so all these things that are there in the detailed design, the behavioral aspects of your system, triggers, and how the system responds to those triggers, how it interacts with the other systems environments is very important. So you find then that your detailed design, as you look at all those, to some extent, you start also looking at the quality aspects, how you are embedding some of the quality aspects in terms of the performance, the safety, the availability, the usability of your system. You're able to see how you have input or how you have described aspects of your usability in your detailed design. And this is important so that it is clear to whoever else is coming to maintain the platform or to support the platform. They are able to see this detailed design instruments there so that they can maintain the platform. So you then are able to ask yourself, what are the formal tools that you're going to use? Those of you who like, those of us who like structured systems analysis, we agree to use those. Those who are using object-oriented UML diagrams, if there are specific tools that you're going to use, like the Visual Studio tools to generate your documentation and ensure everything is available, the standards that you're going to apply are very critical. And of course, you start seeing again the tools you select vis-a-vis how well the team knows it becomes an issue also in terms of your detailed design. And one of the challenge that the authors raise is the incompleteness of the detailed design, or sometimes the incorrectness. You may find that um, as as you modify things, you don't even maybe come and update your documentation, and that means it becomes incomplete or incorrect. Yeah, if you don't do it, it means it is incomplete. But if you don't update to reflect the current state of what it is that maybe perhaps you have updated, it becomes incorrect or it becomes incorrect. So you have to ensure that the designs themselves are up to date. And when you think about the importance of these design issues, just to observe, if you have friends in the built engineering department, I find them very interesting in the sense that they can never start a project unless all those documents, the customer or the client has agreed to them and those documents have been approved. And so it means you as a client, you can't just come and change. So they know the documents that are needed. If it is the structural diagram, the structural engineer has done their diagram. If it is the interior designer, they have done the interior design thing. If it is the one who is supposed to do the electricity, so they have all these very many different sets of diagrams. And if you change, I think a friend of mine recently was telling me that they wanted to change something in their building, and the architect refused to say at that point I cannot agree to change for you because you would need to change very many other things. So the repercussions of changing something, and so when we reflect this on our computing field, then we are able to see if we change maybe perhaps the database design, what implications does it have to the other aspects of the design that we have already taken care of. What other aspect does it have? Implications does it have to the tools and things like that? So it's important to understand the role of detailed designs vis-a-vis the standards that are required. And then finally, the other component that the authors raise as a challenge is the component of the environment. Yeah. And here in the environment is being able to understand the business model. Yeah, the business model, the emerging business models that are there. How are you going to respond? So you find that these are important. It becomes a challenge when somebody does not understand the business models that are there. But if they do understand, then the organization is able to respond quickly. So for example, you may see that for a very long while, I think the YouTube proprietors were never really, I think there's the free component, and then nowadays I think they ask you to subscribe if you do not want advertisements. So you can see them now embracing, yes, you may want free, but if you don't want to be disturbed as you listen to your song or to watch your movie or your video, you can use that other model. So putting in very many different business models or adapting to the different business models. So it's a response that organizations or the proprietors of these e-commerce platforms need to provide. The other thing is the government. And, when you think about the government with its needs to comply with certain rules, because the government, you can't control what the rules that they come up with. And so you have to understand that, and it is a challenge. So for example, I don't know, I've not read the latest about the cab hailing services, in the sense that how is the government ensuring they comply with the taxes, and the way this some of these businesses are complex, and in that at what point do you tax? Are you taxing the retailer? Are you taxing the platform owner? And if you're going to tax the platform owner, what percentages and all those other things? And I think with time, they may have actually reached a point where they are either the company, the tax hailing companies are the ones who submit the taxes based on the commissions that they get, but I'm not sure if the individual drivers are paying taxes by themselves in terms of this is my taxi and I'm supposed to pay the taxes. Anyone with any update on that? Anyone who operates or has a relative who does this business and they may actually give them some information on the taxing? I haven't read about them more recently, but I know it is something, and it's not just the government of Kenya that has that problem. Across the globe, the taxing the e-commerce platforms is a big issue. The issue of data protection and privacy also comes in. How do we ensure that the providers of these services are complying with this protection or data consumer rights that are available? Then in terms of the international markets, you might find that actually how, let's say you have ordered an item and it has never been delivered, how is that going to be settled? And so you find then that there's normally international trade laws or frameworks that guide this, and a lot of these large e-commerce websites must be able to work under those legal frameworks so that they can preserve the processes. They can ensure if there is any legal dispute, they are able to settle the disputes, and they are able to do everything that they are doing within a legal and policy framework that is critical for their services. And so it means then that even as we do all this, then we should be able to ask ourselves how does the need for all this affect the design, if at all it does? And does it imply, what does it imply into the design effort? I came across some content, I think it must have been on Facebook, where some users actually say that I think now you as a consumer or as a user of the platform, you can actually say you don't want your data used for any other purposes, without your authorization. And so if it is like that, then it will mean then if it has an implication that the design team needs to be able to check out, maybe perhaps it is a check item or a flag onto the user profile that this user has not accepted these particular terms, and so we cannot harvest their data and things like that. Yeah. So very important to understand some of the things that affect our design effort. Yes, Edwin, your hand is up.
When doing documentation, for let's say you have developed an e-commerce platform, you're going to do a documentation and in the aspect of the technical documentations, assuming let's say an e-commerce platform like eBay, they tend to rely on third-party products for the sake of products like a money back guarantee, whereby a user in Kenya can pay for a product, let's say in China, and then wait for it to be imported to Kenya. And then if the product has an issue, there's a money back guarantee whereby the provider can send another item or they can return that item back and then the money might be returned to the buyer. So you get that eBay developers probably they just develop the e-commerce platform, but they are relying on a third party maybe system or product that is handling the money back processes and maybe interfacing with banking systems. So when doing the documentation, do we do the documentation? Do we include the technical documentations of these other systems that are interfacing with the bank, or are we just include the documentation only for our system?
But if you are having integration points, at the point of integration, I would assume then that there's documentation one for the integration part. What does the third party do and what is the scope of the third party's provision. I'll also expect that within the third party service provision agreement, your memorandum of understanding, they have given the user or the owner of the company that you are providing the service for, because they're not giving you the documentation. You are not the ones who have contracted them as an implementer. The owner of the platform is the one who has contracted them. So I believe that the third parties then would have agreements and documentation to the user or to the owner of the platform, and it is upon that owner of the platform to see if you actually need access to that document or not.
Okay. And just a comment on maybe why most local e-commerce platforms in Kenya have not been able to implement the money back. things like Jumia and this other one, they have not been able to implement money back guarantee. I don't know why they have not adapted this. Maybe it's an old technology.
I'm not sure whether it is an issue to do with technology because in terms of money back guarantee, it's actually you're saying that our services are trustworthy. The item you have bought is trustworthy, and in the event that it is not, we are able to guarantee you. You're actually giving them a warranty. And I think there's research that has been done uh, about e-commerce in Africa and why some of these have really not kicked off or stabilized. If you think about Jumia, I think Jumia split with another. They split up. I think that when they split up, the other people went to start something else, which also looks like a platform to compete with Jumia. But the history of e-commerce, even before Jumia, you will find there used to be, was it called OLX or something? Yeah, which we thought had really tried to have a market segment, but it also collapsed. And I think we will do, I'm not sure if it is in this class or that is another topic for, because in the fourth, in the masters, we actually do aspects to do with trust. Yeah, remember when we were looking at the ecosystems, we spoke about trust. And when you think about the e-commerce or the ecosystems are supported by very many different players. And so trust is a very key aspect in the success of this e-commerce platforms. Because remember, you as maybe the owner of the platform, you are not the one with the items. You are not the one selling agricultural products, and then you're also the one selling household products. You're actually depending on a retailer to be trustworthy enough to provide the quality products and all that. So trust has been a very big issue in some of these platforms. And I think, in my view, that could be one of the reasons why money back guarantee has not been implemented. Just to even ask yourself, you go to town itself, you want to buy something, and somebody knows very well that what they are selling you is not what you're looking for, but if you're not keen enough and you are maybe going to look for a spare part, they're going to still sell you, and they know it is not fitting with what you're looking for, but they still want to sell. So long as they have sold to you, their problem is finished. Now you can't come back and tell them, you sold me something wrong. I don't know if you get. So we have the problem of our culture and trust. Do we keep our word? In some of these regions where you're seeing e-commerce really thriving, there's the culture of trust in them. Their word is, trust is a big component in e-commerce platforms. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, it's well answered. I think Kenyans, they found a workaround what they usually call cash on delivery. But now the shortcoming of that is that I can get the product and look at it on delivery. Then after using it for a few days, and then I discover it is actually having issues. But now you see with money back guarantee, these funds are held by a third party, let's say like escrow, so that it's not here and the client who have the money during the mid process. These funds are stored in a different player. Then once all parties are okay, then the funds are sent to the right person. If there's a discrepancy, it is restored back to the client. And on that aspect, I think that is a really critical and and something that maybe can make Jumia more competitive if they could implement that and sell trust as something that will convince clients to use their platform over the other one.
It's all about trust. Yeah. Yes, that is who Tevin Aduma. Go ahead.
Yeah, just to add on to the same thing, I agree that doing because you find even okay at home, Jumia, if you look at the items that they purport that they're shipping from abroad, first thing you'll notice is they're saying no refunds. Okay, as a customer, maybe I would probably try to understand that aspect. But as Edwin says, the item you receive on hand is far much different from the one that you got, and the return policies are not user friendly. So, like, I just wonder how such a platform was built without, putting consumer best practices first. I just wonder. I don't know, because liability is something that should be really taken into account by such platforms, given the criticality of the work that they do.
Yeah, and that is what I was explaining, that they are not ready to take the liability because remember the Jumia is just a platform. And so these persons that they are the retailers themselves, are they able to agree on the return policy? So you might find that maybe perhaps in these other countries, the retailers by law, remember we talked about the international trade law, yeah, and even the local laws. Perhaps their consumer laws are in such a way that if something that does not meet some of the quality aspects that they require, then the manufacturer or the retailer takes the responsibility. And I just remember a case to point. I think those of you who read the newspapers, you remember there was an item where the EPZ here in Athi River, I think there's an export processing zone, and it actually produces different apparels. And I think this time the apparel in question was a design for some baby clothes, and they exported them to the US. And the babies, I think one of the consumers said it is a risk to their baby the way I think the button had been put or something. It could actually, the babies could remove the button and actually swallow the button. And there was a recall. There was a recall to all those garments. And so you find then the protection of the consumers there is higher. I don't know how our laws are. I'm not a lawyer, a commercial lawyer, but maybe perhaps as Jumia, the owner of the platform, they are not able to mandate their retailers, or they are not able to negotiate their retailers the aspect of returning. And then there's the other side of the coin. We ourselves, as the populace, as the people who are buying these items, we're also not trustworthy. Yeah, we may actually buy something, stay with it for 2 days, spoil it, and then claim it came in spoiled. So it's two-way. Yes, it's two-way. Even you had your hand raised, or it has been covered in the discussion.
I was just wondering, you see, when you look at the built direction, engineers and architects, they have these regulatory bodies. When it comes to insurance, we have regulatory bodies for insurance. Even maybe things like to do with the electricals in a structure. There's regulations and how, like I said, set set terms on how you should implement something. If you're installing electricity in a structure, there are terms of there are specifications that installation should meet. Don't we have and there's a regulatory body that actually inspects that later? Don't we have one that does the same for software, maybe software engineering, so that once a software is deployed, before it is released to the public, it needs to meet those specifications so that at least us as me as a computer scientist, when I look at a platform like Jumia, I can see those discrepancies. Like I look at Jumia and I see it is not meeting the specifications of a good platform for e-commerce. But a normal user who doesn't have knowledge of ICT, it might think that is how that site is supposed to work. But for us as computer scientists, we can see there's something missing from that platform. So don't we have a regulatory body that actually does that for the public?
Remember yesterday when I said we are the only ones computing IT are the only ones who have not yet regularized a professional body for even their practitioners. These are the things that such organizations would be able to regulate, to have rules and regulations for, and things like that. But remember, those who think they are IT, but they're not really IT, want to say if you regularize, you're going to hinder innovation, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but professional conduct, professional services is sometimes through these professional bodies, that is where you are able to regularize some of the things that should be done. Yeah, even these things where you have people build a website, and after they've built the website, they start collecting money, these pyramid schemes, and then in another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, the website is gone. Yeah, it's still something to do with professional ethics. Yeah, so that's what I can say. Yeah, let's wind up. I think we have about 4 or 5 slides on the usability, but I think a lot of the usability issues, remember this, I think there were about 2 or 3 of us who shared some of their challenges in developing mobile phone based projects that they were doing, and this short paper was actually looking at some of the usability issues that are associated with with the with the devices that are available for 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 access to the e-commerce platforms or to the services provided. And so there was that short paper that was looking at the design of usable interfaces for mobile e-commerce systems. Yeah. And I hope we read them, but these are just things that you are quite familiar with when it comes to usability issues. I think you have done quite. There's a course I think you did about usability. Is it HCI or has it been changed? I don't know. The syllabus has been changing, and I'm not. I think sometimes I confuse between because I think you're still on CS. The lot behind you are not on CSI. I think they're on another curriculum. Anyway, yeah. So so we have issues to do with when you think about usability, then 3 things that are very important and are measured a lot is to do with efficiency, effectiveness, and the user satisfaction. Yeah. And so there are those challenges that are there. Are we able to predict, our users able to predict the next action? Because remember, we say that the mobile platform is a gadget they use with, the familiarity that they use with. So in terms of your usability of interface, can it be able to be predictable? Can they be able to see the next move? Can they be able to control their actions, or the gadget takes over and it moves and moves and moves? Can they be able to use it without being distracted from whatever else that they are doing? Do they feel that the information that is there is private? They are able to experience privacy. Yeah, and the learning curve, since it is a gadget that they are always with, are they able to learn the way you design your own user interface? Is it something easy? And remember, we talked about, or we just mentioned it in class, where we said that a lot of us are never taught how to use the app. When we download it, somehow we are using our existing knowledge to use the interface or to bring into context that we should be able to reuse the knowledge the user already has. Yeah. So when we think about some of the needs or some of the things that are important is efficiency. Efficiency is how quick, with a number of steps, are we able to complete the transaction, how clear it is, the clarity, which then implies immediate learnability. You don't need to start looking for a manual on how to use it. Is it simple? Yeah, the simplicity, the elements that are you have presented there in your user interface, how simple they are, so that you are not overcrowding the small screen with so many things. How seamless it is, the symbiosis of your user interface, and how then you're not actually causing an overload, whether it is auditory, whether it is the motor limits, the movement of the hands, the eyes as they are looking. So all those are very important when you look at the user interfaces that we are designing and how then they are evaluated. These are some of the criteria that people use to evaluate their user interfaces. And then the authors provided for us some guidelines, which, as I said, are guidelines that we are most likely aware of. Learnability, it should be easy to use from the first time you upload it onto your phone, you download and install. You should be able to learn it without having to ask somebody, so that you are quickly able to do the task that you are required to. It should be efficient. To complete a task, it should be very efficient. Um, if you think about those of us who love, puzzles, the puzzles and the games, I'll take the example of the mind. Sometimes when you want to relax your mind a bit, or maybe task your mind a little bit, you can go online and you play the Sudoku game. And it has different levels, yeah, from level 1 up to the extremely difficult level. And if you think about the learnability, you are able to actually replicate what you do on paper. There, it's very easy to learn. Then you are able to see. You can actually put in your digits. There is a functionality where you can, when you put it on, you are able to type in all the available options for a particular cell. So it makes it easy to learn. It's learnability, it's efficiency in terms of to complete a game. If you're very fast and you already know the rules, you can easily fill in the cells and see which numbers are supposed to be there, and do your logic and fill it. Yeah. So the simplicity of it, yeah. So I was just giving that as an example of a platform that is on the mobile. Whether I'm using my mobile or I'm using my laptop, I still get the same level of satisfaction in terms of the puzzle. Yeah. The tasks are made as efficient as possible. Yeah. In terms of the time it takes, the memorability, the interface should be easier to use each time the user interacts with it. So you're able to learn something that actually I saw this and it's a function that I can use in the next time. Yeah. So for example, when I learned that like on the mobile, I'm able to see the digits that I have almost completed. The ones that I've completed are ticked off, so I don't get to say them. It's something, so I'm able to see, okay, now I will not be thinking about digit number 2 because I've already filled all the number 2s in my mind. Then it helps me even enjoy the game better. Yeah. Or recovery, users should not be allowed to make a mistake. So if there's an error, how do you recover from the error? Yeah. If it is on an e-commerce platform, how do you help the user to recover from the error? So if I've placed something on the cart, how do I remove it from the cart? So some of these things are very important for your user interface. Keeping it simple is important. Being able to allow users to be in control of the user interface is very important. Users being enjoying using the user interface is very important. So you start seeing these aspects of the user interface as important points to consider when you're looking at designing a user interface. So they map out to the learnability, the efficiency, the simplicity, being able to rectify your mistake and all that. I remember when the keyboards, I was just observing a lady had come with their child, and the child was, I think, about 5 years. 5 years, and they were just typing onto the computer. And they made a mistake. And you see, the children don't know delete button. So the child was busy asking the mother, where's the rubber on the computer? Where's the rubber? Because that is what they're used to in class, they rub. Yeah, and so being shown the delete button or the backspace button for him makes sense that is the rubber. So being able to map, being able to allow users to make to undo the errors that they have done is important. One of the other things that is also important is mapping out, are users expecting, if I see next button and I click that next button, do I see what I should be seeing happen next? The flow of the interface should also be very important. Like for example, if I see dashed arrows on my mobile, I expect to see a drop-down menu. Is that what I see? Because that is what I expect. That is what I'm used to seeing on the mobile, other mobile applications. Consistency, consistency. Yeah, so sometimes when we start doing UI, sometimes you'd find somebody is using the word next, then going backwards, they could use back, and then instead of the next page, they would actually say forward instead of next. So consistency of the way the words and the elements and the buttons are labeled across the application is very important. And then finally, we see that in that paper, they actually try to compare the two different stores that are there. This is just some of the principles that they have looked at, and they compare with those two and see how well some of the issues have been taken care of. So it's a very short paper which tells us a little bit more of usability and things that we should be able to look out for, and we should actually read and be able to understand what they are talking about, and then the slides can be used as a supplementary. Yeah. So that brings us to the end of some of the design challenges that we see in the designing challenges and also on the mobile. Yeah, so I think we are remaining with a few, is it one or two topics? I need to check on that. I think there's one topic that we need to look. We've already looked at ecosystems. We've looked at the design challenges. We need, there's one assignment on the platforms, and you still owe one assignment on the social network analysis. I think the presentations for the social network analysis can go towards the end. We can keep pushing them until we finish the coursework. So what I will do is I will, I think what we are remaining with is one topic on, it's a notice for another meeting at 10 minutes to, okay. Yeah, I think we still have one more topic and two assignments. One assignment that you need to submit on ecosystems, and then the presentations on the social network analysis. So we'll see how it goes next week. So thank you very much and have a good afternoon, unless we have any questions. All right, if we don't have any question, then have a good afternoon. We'll see you next week.